Never cold call again in 2026 until you watch this video. All I've been seeing over the last 6 to 12 months is that cold calling is dead. The once great sales method that was glamorized from films such as Wolf of Wall Street no longer worked. And at absolute face value, I probably agree. The methods from the noughties and the 90s, that never let them say no, buy or die, bullying prospects into sales, or even, taping phones to salespeople's hands until they made a sale. It just doesn't work anymore, not at least compared to other marketing mediums that are available to us in 2026. However, there are a few strategies that we can use to combine the old school methodology with some newer, more modern methods to still achieve great results. In today's video, I'm going to be teaching you 2 methods that you can use effectively cold calling in 2026 and still getting great results. If you stay to the end of the video, I'm actually going to give you a bonus tip that can supercharge your results at a fraction of the price. Before we go any further, you probably want to know why I'm even qualified to speak about this. When I first started my business in 2022, my first business, we only had one method to get new clients on. We didn't have any money, we couldn't have fancy marketing, we only had cold calling. Myself and my business partner locked ourselves away in a small office for 8 hours a day and just called prospects. We actually were able to generate over $100,000 in revenue in our first year. It just was not worth the pain. It was boring. Prospects didn't want to buy on a single call, and it wasn't selling. It was just pestering prospects until they either hung up or they went to our next stages. It was effective at the time, but we just decided that we did not leave our cushy jobs to sit there and cold call all day, just be told to F off. So we had to adapt, and that is when we saw the real results start. So let's start with what a traditional cold calling funnel would look like and what, people were using back in the 90s, the noughties, and probably up until COVID. And we'll talk about COVID in a second and why that changed everything. Well, what would happen is the salesperson would come to their data. Now, normally this was just a list of phone numbers that either got online or they'd lead sourced previously, or they'd found, like the Yellow Pages or a book or something, whatever you kind of use in the country you're watching this from. What would then happen is they'd make the call into the number and they'd get hit with the gatekeeper. Now, if you know what a gatekeeper is and you cold call, then you know they're the absolute banes of a cold caller's existence. They have one job, and that is to protect calls going into the person you actually want to talk to. In this case, the prospect, and you kind of hope that the person you're speaking to is then the decision maker. And what a lot of cold callers used to do is bypass this person by loads of different methods, lying, or just using very clever tactics to try and get through. It'd normally be like an internal transfer. What you then do is you'd pitch the prospect whatever you're trying to do in something called, or in most times, a one-call close. So what a one-call close is kind of what it says in the name. You're trying to get the prospect to close in one call. And I absolutely love one-call closes, but not for cold calling, for sales calls. And I think a lot of people get this mixed up. They think that cold calling is the same as sales calls. They're completely different. Taking a cold prospect and trying to close them in one go is near impossible in today's age. So what we have to do is actually, and we're going to talk about this in method 1 and 2, is we have to warm them up a little bit more. What would happen is after the pitch, this would be a very, very fancy script. Let's keep this color things. This would be like a nice script, which is kind of, is that spelled right yet? Which is kind of the idea behind that is just to practice something and deliver it over and over again. The prospect would then have 2 things that would happen. It would come down here. They would buy, or they would probably end up hanging up. Now, the reason why this used to work quite well is because it was relatively fresh, and it was the only way you could ever get to a prospect was through cold calling them. However, I think, in my opinion, the biggest change here was actually in here and in terms of the data. Now, in COVID, what happened is that everyone went to work from home, and they kind of realized that they didn't need to have all of these fancy office phones and office numbers. If you remember, 15, 20 years ago, everyone had a phone next to their desk, which was their designated phone, and calls would get passed through all the time. Whereas during COVID, when everyone kind of went to home, it was very hard to get hold of individual people that you wanted to speak to, in this case, the prospect. You no longer could really go down this method. If you've got the gatekeepers, they became very wise and they became very clued up on this, and they just kind of stopped putting transfers through. Now, of course, some people will be watching this going 100%, I can get through 99% of the time. And there are methods you can use to get past gatekeepers that will potentially go through in future videos, but it did become a lot harder. So what happened was you'd spend probably 90%, if not more, of your time talking to the gatekeepers and not talking to the prospects. And let me guarantee you one thing, these people are never going to buy. These are the nice conversations you have where you think you're selling. Here's where you're actually selling. So the problem here is that you've only really got two options. They either buy, if you even get through, they either buy or they hang up. There's no way of actually getting anything from them if they come to this. So if you imagine here that 90% of your calls you're going to get stuck in here, and of the 10% that you do get through, let's say one person buys and then 9 of them hang up. So out of 100 calls, even as this example here, you've had 1% buy. Which if you then stick this over a large amount of volume, yeah, sure, you might get one person to buy a day. But in reality, the number's going to be a lot less than this. I know I've seen, when we were doing it, if we had a 5%, conversion rate, that was unbelievable, 5 out of 100, when in reality, we would probably get in a close 1 every 3 days. So if we were averaging 600 calls, you can do the maths on how many that actually converted to. But overall, it did not work the way that we wanted it to. And we spent a lot of our time talking to gatekeepers or even just not being able to get the data. So let's move on to a method that I like to use now, which can still use this traditional setting, but it's just a lot more modern. So method one that we've used to actually have real good success whilst actually still using an old school method like cold calling is actually doing the call to quiz. Now the difference here, well, there's an absolute ton of differences and we'll break them all down right now. So the first difference is that we're no longer going to be calling info numbers. We're not calling into gatekeepers. Every person we speak to is going to be the person we're trying to actually, the decision maker, the prospect. We're done with the gatekeepers. So I know what you're going to say, how on earth are we going to be able to speak to people? Well, we actually need to find their direct dials. Now, there's a load of different ways that you can do this. The one that we've actually used and had good success with is a company called Lusher. You can go and do your own research. Maybe I'll actually put a link in below so you can give it a go. But what Lusher does is it gets the direct dial of the person, normally the phone number. And how it does it, I don't know. But all I know is you need a LinkedIn account. You put in your prospect search and it comes up with as many direct dials as you can. Now, obviously, this is more expensive, but it's worth it because you can spend less time wasting talking to gatekeepers and not actually going through to the correct prospects. If I've only got 10% of conversations, then I might as well spend the 10% of time I actually speak to prospects by just paying to speak to their direct numbers. The other way you can do this is obviously to buy data, and we're actually talking about this in method 2. But for now, we only have one way, and it's going to be getting the direct dials, paying for it with a company like Lusher. So once you have the direct dial, you're actually going to come across and you're going to have something we call a disarm pitch. You're not trying to one call close. There is no one call close here. So we aren't, the idea of this pitch isn't to get them to close or to even buy. We just want to buy more time and interest so that we can educate them on the service or product that we have. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to send them to a quiz. So we're going to build a quiz or a questionnaire on anything such as, Score App is what we normally use. There's other methods, there's other companies you can use. Perspective, for example, also do the same thing. We're going to build a quiz, and the aim of the quiz is to educate them that they need your service. So they need your product, or in most senses, your service. So how do you do this? On the disarm pitch, you're going to use, pattern interrupt. You probably know what that is. If not, you watch another person's YouTube video. I'm not the king of cold calling. I've never claimed to be. I just know methods that work for it. I hate it. I hated doing it. So I found, lazy people find the easiest way of doing it. I found the method that I enjoyed the most. So what you're actually going to do here is have a disarm pitch, which is effectively going to say, I'm not selling. So how I'd structure this, if I was coming through and I was selling, leader marketing services, which is one of my companies, and let's say I was selling to a guy called Mark, what I would do is I'd come in and my pitch would be something on the lines of, like, hi Mark, this would use a pattern interrupt. So be, hi Mark, this is a cold call. You could either hang up, give me 30 seconds. I know it's overused, but people still like it being used on them because they're like, oh, I've heard about that, whatever. If you don't know what pattern interrupt is, I'm not the king of sales. As I've said, cold calling, I'm good at making these. So you can come up with your own pattern interrupts. But the actual script would say something on the lines of, look, hi Mark, once he's giving you the time, or, she's giving you the time, it'd be like, hi Mark, I'm not here to sell you anything. So I'm not trying to get you to buy. I'm not trying to get your credit card details. I don't even want, anything from you. What I've done is I've made an online questionnaire that can basically diagnose your business to see if you'd be a good fit for us. And I might include, a small thing about what we do. I might say, look, we're Leader. We help businesses get more leads. I'm not going to sell you that. What I've done is I've made a questionnaire. It's online. Give it a go. And if you like what you see, we can arrange next steps. If you don't like what you see or we're not a good fit, it's going to tell you. They'll probably appreciate the fact you're not selling. Now, obviously, we're going to talk in a dream world. You might still only get 10% of people who react in a good way, but it's still a lot better than it was before. Once you kind of get through and you say, look, can I send it across to you? If they say yes, then it's what's your email address? And then you're just going to send the link to the quiz. All we're going to do is just send the link. If they say no, then have the link ready to go that you know it. So let's say you're using Score App, you could have, for example, www.leaderquiz.com. That way, all they've got to do is go leaderquiz.com, and they might do it if they don't allow you to actually have their email address. What is the quiz going to do? Well, the quiz is going to educate them that they need your product and service. But what it's going to do is allow them to do it at their own time, not your time. So if you're trying to catch them at 3 p.m. on a Friday and they want to get home to their wife and kids, well, it's probably not a good time. But if you then email across the quiz and they do see it, people like new marketing methods. And I can guarantee that if you send enough of these to your prospects, they will start to engage with them. Obviously, it's going to be a numbers game. You can't do one and expect results, but it's going to be a lot better than what you currently do. Let's say they do fall in the quiz. This is where we have to have our genius. So once they've filled in the quiz, you own their data. You own his data. He's going to opt in on the first page of the landing page. So the first thing you do is opt in, which means you now own the data. You're going to ask for, what's the business, everything you need to sell is on the first half of the quiz, and everything you want him to learn is on the second half of the quiz. Now, in a dream world, they do the quiz and they come and they book a call, but we don't live in a dream world. So let's say they fill it in and you find out they're a dream prospect for you, but they haven't booked a call with you yet. And you're asking me, how can I get them to convert? We're going to set up a lovely nurture sequence. So first thing is going to be the email. This might be 3 to 5 emails. The goal here, like I said, is just to get them to either book a call or to buy. Now, let's say it's a proper dream prospect and they don't come through and buy after the first 3 to 5 emails. Well, the next step I would do is I'd follow them on LinkedIn, or I'd connect with them on LinkedIn, and I would send them results of the quiz. Now, sending them the results of the quiz is very personalized because it's their answer. And again, it's a way that we can get through that isn't abrupt and it isn't as aggressive as just trying to get people to close on the first call. Essentially, the word we're going to use here, and the word that I use all the time, is we want to educate. If we're following the FDO framework here, educate, feeling, we want them to feel something, trust, and then offer. If you own the data through the quiz, you're then in charge of what they see. Now, the final thing we might then do if they still aren't responding is we might call them again. It's a lot easier to call again. You call through and say, look, hi Mark, it's Mitchell again from Leader Marketing. You filled in our questionnaire. It looked like you was a good fit. You didn't book a call. I just wanted to know if you wanted to go through the results. Now, you might catch them at a better time. And at this time, once you've called them, they've actually heard from you once on the first call, second on the quiz, 3 to 5 on the email, which would then be 7 touch points, LinkedIn 8. So by the time you get to them, you're on your 9th touch point. Now, they say it takes 7 to 11 to buy. So you've had a very good opportunity to get into the middle of that and actually then go for the kill of the sale or getting them to book a call with you. If you want a bonus tip, and something that we've used that's worked, is actually incentivizing the quiz completion. So what we would do, and this worked really, really well, and I'm just going to scrub this out so I can just put it in the middle, is on the call, on the initial call, we would say something on the lines of, "Hi, Mark. Let's say we've done all the niceties. If you fill it in, we will send you X, Y, and Z." So what we actually did that worked really well was sending cupcakes. So on the cold call, we would say, "Look, Mark, if you fill in the questionnaire that we've made for you, we will actually just send you cupcakes to the office for you and your team, just for filling it in, no questions asked." And then what we'd then do is once they did fill it in, we'd then call him up again. "Hi, Mark, it's just Mitch here from Leader. I just wanted to know the best address to send you the cupcakes." They would then go, "Yep, sure, here's the address." And then once they said that, you'd go through and say something along the lines of, "And look, did you want to go through your results?" I mean, that's when we can get into some real good selling. Selling isn't cold calling. Selling is once you have the data and actually trying to go through. So once you say something like, "Look, can we go, would you like to go through the quiz answers? Would you like to go through your report that we have made for you?" He might then say yes. And then you go through time, then it's a lot more traditional. This method, especially with the super boost of using something like cupcakes, works so well. Give it a try. And at the end, I'm actually going to give you a bonus tip that you can use here to make this even better, cheaper, and to scale it. Because I know what you're saying is hard to scale. Trust me, with the tip I have at the end, it makes it a lot easier. So let's get on to method number 2. And obviously, this is for businesses who have a little bit more disposable money to spend in their marketing, and they still want to use calling. So they want to use modern methods like ads, paid ads, content, things like that. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to run ads to a booker call. And how that works isn't as simple as just running, like a VSL, which don't really work anymore. Now, of course, people say they do, but at the success it had 10 years ago, it's nowhere near. So what we're actually going to do is we are going to run paid ads to the quiz that we've made. Now, the difference here is that once they've done that questionnaire, quiz, whatever you want to call it, we're going to call them instantly. I am talking under 5 minutes. So as soon as they do that, we are going to call them. So how would this look in practice? Well, we would set up some paid ads. We're probably going to use Meta here for this example. So if we were selling something fun, let's take a product, because we always do services, but let's take a product. Let's say that our product was ice baths, right? What we're going to do is we are going to set up paid ads that people who have ice baths or something that your product can fit would then have as a pain point. So let's say the pain point was very simply no energy in the afternoon. What we would then do is the ad would be like, "Do you have no energy in the afternoon?" Well, fill in this questionnaire. Once they then come to it, and what the questionnaire would do, once again, is to educate that ice baths would be good for them, right? So they're going to come through and they're going to have this. I know this isn't a great example in terms of services, but for products, it's pretty good. So they have no energy in the afternoon. They're going to, someone resonates with the no energy in the afternoon. They click on the questionnaire, and then the goal of the questionnaire is to educate them that, ice baths could be quite good for them. What the end of the quiz is going to come, and there's going to be a buy option. And if they don't buy within the first 5 minutes, we are then going to come through and call them. You will be shocked at the success that you can have by simply allowing people to come to you as opposed to you coming to them. Now, ice baths are quite low ticket, but they're a great example. If you replaced ice baths with one of your SaaS products, for example, let's say for me, I'm making this video right now and I struggle with not having scripts, right? And the ad here could be the same sort of thing of, do you struggle when making your YouTube videos to follow a script? I click on it. The questionnaire is going to be around, what do I do? What's my goal? Why am I making YouTube videos? Do I want them to be professional? Do I want them to be, not as professional? Once they have that data, they can then sell me their product or service. Let's say the service was a SaaS product that allowed me to, give them my script, and they will come up with edits, and they will also give me some sort of teleprompter, which I can go through and record the videos, right? That's, an example that we can use for like a SaaS product. And then at the end of it, they're trying to sell me their software. Now, if they don't sell me the software, they then call me within 5 minutes saying that, Mitch, you filled in all our information. You didn't buy. What was it? Are you not that interested in it? Your goal said they're this. If we again go back to the video I made last week, which was on, where they are, and your solution is this, and then they get to their destination. So if I want to make professional videos, which is here, and at the moment I struggle here, then this is their solution, which is going to take me towards it. And that's what they're going to be saying to me on the sales call. Trust me, this works really, really well when it comes to higher ticket stuff, because once they opt in, you can treat their data so preciously. You learn things about them that you wouldn't have previously got. I'm not going to go through now and explain why quiz funnels are so effective, but this is the method that I would be using if you're doing over 20,000 a month and you've got 3 to 5 grand a month ready to spend in ads. Run the paying ads to the quiz and then call them near enough instantly. Now, I promised you a bonus if you stay to the end, so I'm going to go through it now, which is how you can actually scale it. And this is revolving around calling to quizzes. So this is the cold calling to directly to a quiz. Now, when traditional salespeople, and if you own the business and you know that your brand is everything, and sometimes you have products that are quite hard to explain, or that you feel that no one can explain it as well as you. Well, that is what the quiz does. This means that the person who is doing the calling doesn't need to be an expert, right? They don't need to be an expert in your field. So what we can actually do here is utilize VAs. Now, if you've never used the VAs before, it might be quite alien to you, but let me tell you, it's brilliant for not only scaling, they actually do a really, really good job. So if you outsource this to, for example, I've had great success with Filipino VAs. You can get them for, $5 to $10 an hour, which is a great wage for them, and also a great way to save compared to, for example, in the UK. And what they can actually do is, because they have such good accents, and there's loads of different countries you can use here, as long as you're doing it very ethically and going through the right onboarding and hiring processes, you can get really effective people in your business to call. But the advantage here is they don't need to be experts, they just need to get people to the quiz. If you're in an English speaking country, I really recommend the Philippines. I've had great success. They're the best people to work with. They work so hard and they do a really, really good job. The goal is to get them to the quiz. So if you maybe hired 5, 6, 7 Filipino VAs, they can do the calling for you, and you have an acquisition system which doesn't rely on their need to be experts. You haven't got to worry about your brand, or you haven't got to worry about them not knowing the questions, because the goal isn't for them to sell. The goal is to get them to the quiz. This does the selling. Give this a go. Give method 1 a go. If you can afford method 2, give method 2 a go. Let me know how you got on, and maybe in a future video I'll break down us actually building this for us and showing you us do this live. So I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did get any value from it whatsoever, you don't need to drop it a like. Just drop me a comment just saying yep, or tried that, or no. If you don't think it will work, I'll be happy to discuss that out in the comments. Cheers.